The woman who was broken but bloomed anyway. You ever been in a place where the weight of life feels like it's pressing down on your soul? Where you're smiling in public but silently screaming behind closed doors? Yeah, I've been there. There was a woman, she wasn't famous, she wasn't flawless, she wasn't the strongest, the loudest, or the most seen, but she was chosen. Chosen to carry a purpose that felt bigger than her. Chosen to walk through fire and still come out gold. Chosen to bloom even when life tried to break her. She wasn't always confident. She wasn't always composed. She wasn't always calm. Sometimes she cried herself to sleep. Sometimes she questioned if she was enough. Sometimes she almost gave up, but she didn't. And that's where the power is, not in her perfection, but in her persistence. She was the kind of woman who walked through storms with shaking knees, but a steady spirit, because deep down she knew something the world didn't. She knew that brokenness doesn't cancel calling. She knew that delay doesn't mean denial. She knew that pain doesn't prevent purpose. And maybe, just maybe, you're that woman too. You've been doubting yourself. You've been waiting for a sign. You've been shrinking, questioning, hiding, but here's the truth. God doesn't use perfect people. He uses the willing. He uses the crushed. He uses the cracked, because that's where the light gets in. So no matter what you've done, no matter how far you feel, no matter how messy it looks, you are still called. You are still chosen. You are still becoming. You're not too late. You're not too broken. You're not disqualified. In fact, you're right on time, because this is your blooming season, and don't you dare let the enemy convince you otherwise. Number two, she didn't feel enough, but God still called her. There was a season where she questioned everything, not because she didn't believe in God, but because she didn't believe in herself. She saw other women doing big things, smiling on Instagram, building businesses, raising families, writing books. And she thought, maybe I missed my moment, and maybe I'm not cut out for more. But hear me when I say this. God doesn't need you to be like them. He needs you to be you. You may not have their background. You may not have their resources. You may not have their followers. But what you do have, you have oil, you have favor, you have resilience. And let me tell you something about oil. It only comes from crushing. So if you've been crushed lately, if you felt pressure from every side, if it feels like life has been squeezing you, it's because your oil is being produced. God hides his greatest gifts. Diamonds are found deep. Gold must be refined, and queens are hidden until their crown is ready. So if you've been hidden, if you've been behind the scenes, if nobody's been calling your name, it's not because you're forgotten. It's because God has been preparing you. You were never overlooked. You were undercover, and when he brings you out, it's going to be undeniable. You'll walk into rooms where no one knows your name, but they'll feel your anointing. You'll sit at tables you weren't invited to, but you'll speak with wisdom that can't be ignored, because you weren't built for popularity. You were built for purpose. We don't like the wilderness. We like blessings, breakthroughs, and blue skies. But real transformation doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in wilderness seasons. It's where God stripped away your attachments. It's where he silenced every voice but his. It's where he taught you how to walk by faith and not by sight. You didn't know you were being trained. You just thought you were being tested. But every tear you cried was watering a future harvest. Every lonely night was making room for divine intimacy. You didn't just survive the wilderness, you met God there. You found him not in the noise, but in the stillness. Not in the spotlight, but in the secret place. And once you've met him like that, you don't walk the same anymore. You used to answer to fear, now you answer to faith. You used to shrink to make others comfortable, now you take up space unapologetically. You used to doubt yourself every time you made a mistake, now you remind yourself that God still uses flawed vessel. Because something happened in that dark place, your identity shifted. You stopped seeing yourself as broken and you started seeing yourself as becoming. You stopped calling yourself damaged and started calling yourself destined. And now when you walk in authority. You walk with fire. You walk with vision. Because once a woman discovers who she really is, there's no going back. There was a moment when she almost gave up. Not just gave up on the dream, she almost gave up on herself. But God stepped in, not with a thunderclap, not with a miracle in the sky, but with a whisper that said, daughter, get back up. And somehow she did, wounded, tired, confused, but she got up anyway. And that was the turning point. The moment heaven leaned in, the moment hell backed up. Because the enemy knew if she ever gets back up, she won't just rise, she'll reign. So now she walks different. Not because life got easier, but because she got wiser. She walks with discernment. She doesn't chase what's not assigned. She doesn't beg for crumbs when she's seated at a royal table. She understands now that closure isn't required when God has already called you forward. She's not looking back. She's not playing small. She's not auditioning for rooms God already gave her access to. Her healing is loud. Her peace is loud. Her yes is loud because the woman who once broke has bloomed. Number 3. She refused to settle, and heaven took notice. There was a time she was willing to settle for relationships that didn't feed her spirit, settle for jobs that drained her, settle for being silent when her voice carried fire. But something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't announced, but in her soul she knew she couldn't keep shrinking just to make others comfortable. She looked at herself in the mirror and said, no more crumbs. I'm worthy of the whole table. See, she used to think humility meant hiding, but God showed her. Real humility is knowing who you are and still choosing grace. She started walking different. She stopped begging for love. She stopped chasing things that didn't choose her. Because queens don't chase, they align. And when she aligned with who she really was, heaven took notice. God said, now she's ready. Not because she had it all together, but because she finally believed she was worth more. She started turning down distractions, turning down counterfeit opportunities, turning down everything that wasn't purpose. Because when you know who you are, you stop entertaining what you're not. And yes, some people left, some relationships ended, some circles got smaller, but her peace got louder. She wasn't moved by who didn't clap. She wasn't bothered by who unfollowed, because she realized something powerful. She was never doing it for them anyway. God had her on assignment. She wasn't building a brand, she was birthing a breakthrough. And breakthroughs, they don't come through comfort. They come through courage. So when fear came knocking, she didn't open the door. When doubt whispered, she raised her praise. She realized faith wasn't the absence of fear. Faith was moving forward while fear screamed stop, so she moved. Not because she had a clear plan, but because she had a clear word. She didn't need all the answers. She just needed alignment. And that alignment, it changed everything. Doors started opening, people started noticing. But the truth is, she wasn't becoming someone new. She was returning to who she always were. Because God had always called her chosen. God had always called her powerful. God had always called her his. And when she started walking in that identity, she became unstoppable. There were still battles. There were still tears. But now she knew the battle wasn't hers. It belonged to the Lord. So she put on her armor, not to impress, not to perform, but to endure. Because there's a woman who knows her worth, and then there's a woman who walks in it. She became both. She didn't shout her transformation, she lived it. She didn't post about her purpose, she pursued it. She didn't wait for applause, she moved because heaven said, go. And in the silence of surrender, in the quiet obedience, God began to do what only he could do. He made beauty from ashes. He made ministry from her mess. He made a movement from her misery. because that's what he does. He takes what should have broken you and uses it to bless others through you. So now when she walks into rooms, she doesn't question if she belongs. She knows she was sent and she won't settle. Not now, not ever again. Because once a woman knows her worth, once she sees herself the way God sees her, everything changes. She doesn't just bloom, she builds. She doesn't just rise, she reigns. She doesn't just heal, she leads others to healing too. Because the woman who refused to settle became the woman God now uses to set others free. And baby, that woman is you. Number 4, she faced the fire and found her voice. She didn't choose the fire, but the fire chose her. The fire didn't come to destroy her, it came to refine her. You see, there's a power in fire. It burns away the things that don't belong. It clears the clutter. It exposes the gold underneath. And when she stepped into that fire, she didn't just survive it, she thrived in it. She discovered something about herself she didn't know. She learned her capacity to withstand. She realized her strength to endure. And while others may have seen her ashes, she saw her potential. Because when God is in the fire with you, he doesn't let you burn out. He refines you. When the storms come, when the darkness surrounds, when the pressure feels like it's too much, that's when God gets the glory. That's when he pulls out the best version of you. And listen, when the fire doesn't burn you, it makes you bold, it makes you brave, it makes you unshakable, because you've been through the fire, but the fire never had you. And now you stand tall, you stand strong, you stand unafraid, because fire doesn't burn away who you are, it reveals who you were always meant to be. She wasn't broken by the heat, she was made by it. And now she speaks with authority. She walks with confidence. She moves with a clarity that only comes after surviving a storm. She isn't the same woman she was before. She's stronger, she's wiser, she's free. She doesn't wait for permission to speak her truth. She doesn't shrink when others try to silence her. She doesn't beg for validation anymore. She found her voice, and when she speaks, people listen, not because of her loudness, but because of her authenticity. Not because of her perfection, but because of her testimony. She's not just telling a story, she's telling a victory. And with every word she speaks, she declares to the world that she's been through the fire and she's still standing. Her fire, it's her foundation. Her journey, it's her message. And nothing can ever take that away from her. She found her voice. She found her power. And now nothing can silence her.